Buddhism is one of the most exotically appealing world religions on the planet, with symbols, teachings, and practices that ignite our spiritual imagination. It is the story of the soul's quest for enlightenment. But with widespread diversity that causes some to regard it philosophically as merely a state of mind and others to interpret it as a fully functioning religion, it can lead outsiders with just as many questions as answers. Yeah, speaking of questions, how come I've never heard of any Buddhist R&B bands? That's easy. They don't have any soul. Bing! Welcome to our series, A Hitchhiker's Guide to World Religions, where we explore and briefly describe all of the major religions in the world in an objective yet light-hearted way. I will be your guide, Derek Cooper, Managing Director of Thomas Institute. Our second stop as we hitchhike our way through world religions is Buddhism, the religion of enlightenment. In terms of numbers, Buddhism is the fourth largest religion in the world, with more than 500 million people who consider themselves practitioner, meaning that it's around 6 or 7% of the world population. Buddhism emerged from India around 2,500 years ago. But like Christianity, Buddhism quickly found refuge in countries outside of its homeland, with Southeast Asia being the historic heartland of the religion. Ironically, the most famous Buddhist of all times, Siddhartha Gautama, was actually a Hindu who renounced major tenets of the Hindu religion, such as belief in the gods and belief that we actually exist. Wait, you mean Neo in the Matrix is right all along? Dang it, I knew I should have watched the second and third films. The story of Siddhartha Gautama is one of the world's greatest fairy tales, and his transformation into the Buddha is kind of like a caterpillar's metamorphosis into a butterfly. After all, the word Buddha comes from the sacred language Sanskrit, and it means awakened one, implying that everyone else is asleep. This gets to the core of Buddhist teaching, which believes that everyone slumbers in a state of ignorance and illusion until they are awakened to the truth that they don't exist. The doctrine of no self, or anatta, is one of the most inscrutable teachings within Buddhism, kind of like the doctrine of the Trinity within Christianity. This doctrine of no self teaches that you don't exist, I don't exist, and in fact, nobody exists. Oh yeah? If that's true, then why do I still see and hear you babbling away? All that really exists in the world is karma, which is a universal force or bundle of energy that is melded together by the so-called 5 skandhas or aggregates: matter, sensations, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. Now, because most people are simply incapable of doing the internal work necessary to break this cycle, which is called samsara, their soul lives on and on again in the doctrine that we know as reincarnation. Speaking of which, did you hear the latest one about reincarnation? No. I hear it's making a comeback. What Buddhism teaches is how a person is to break this band of energy that is held together by karma. In short, the Buddha discovered how to do this when he was meditating under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya after renouncing a life of pleasure and riches and searching for a way to solve the problem of suffering. What the Buddha discerned while deep in meditation is that there are 4 noble truths that everyone must understand and implement in order to wake up from ignorance and illusion. First, he learned that every part of life is marked by unsatisfactoriness, a word that's often translated as suffering. Now, this doesn't mean that every part of life is a drag, but it does mean that to be alive is to suffer. And not even death eliminates this, since it is simply the trigger that shoots our soul into another body that will also suffer. Second, the Buddha learned that we suffer because we desire things and we attach ourselves to them. And because nothing is permanent, any attachment we make will necessarily cause us to suffer, since everything is always changing. So that's why my Buddhist friend never vacuums the corner in his house. He doesn't have attachments. The last two of the Four Noble Truths go together, while the third teaches that suffering, the root cause of which is ignorance and illusion, can be eliminated. The last explains that suffering can be eliminated only by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, although this is the philosophy that undergirds Buddhism, and there are many people, especially in the West, who just focus on this internal thinking, Buddhism is also a fully functional religion. And having visited many Buddhist countries throughout East Asia and Southeast Asia, I can tell you that most practitioners of Buddhism are much more concerned and connected to this liturgical component of the religion. This means, practically speaking, that most Buddhists in Asia are not necessarily attempting to exit the never-ending process of death and rebirth, but instead are focused on worshiping one of many Buddhist gods and goddesses, just as Muslims worship Allah, Hindus worship Vishnu, and Christians worship Jesus. To generalize, there are two major denominations within Buddhism: Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism is the oldest, most traditional, and most conservative of the different denominations. It's the denomination that's most similar, but not exactly identical, to what the Buddha taught. It's most common in Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, Cambodia, and Myanmar or Burma. This denomination highlights the role monks play, since it's commonly believed that only monks can achieve nirvana or liberation from the illusion of life. For instance, when you see pictures of Buddhist monks in saffron robes, these are Theravada Buddhists. In contrast, Mahayana Buddhism is less strict, more focused on lay people, and directed to the worship of one of hundreds of Buddhist gods and goddesses that offer liberation. This is the form of Buddhism that's most common in East Asian countries like South Korea and Japan. Now, it goes without saying that each of these denominations emphasizes different religious scriptures. For instance, while Theravada Buddhists take refuge in the so-called Tripitaka, or the three baskets, which contain the teachings and the sayings of the Buddha, my favorite being the Dhammapada, Mahayana Buddhists add to this canon many additional sutras or scriptures, such as the Heart Sutra or the Diamond Sutra. As far as worship practices go, there is a ton of diversity. Depending on their traditions, Buddhists may chant, meditate, offer sacrifices to a specific god or goddess, burn incense, read scriptures, or listen to Dharma talks. But again, there is a lot of diversity within Buddhism, and there's much more that could be said of this really impressive religion and way of life. If you would like to learn more about Buddhism, I recommend my book, Christianity in World Religions, An Introduction to the World's Major Faiths. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to share it with others. I'll see you next time.